Good evening, everybody. I'm Lou Dobbs. We begin with breaking news tonight. The United States and Russia have just announced a new peace deal for Syria. Secretary of State John Kerry says Russia and the United States have agreed to a cessation of hostilities in Syria to take effect by Monday. Also tonight, a big sell-off on Wall Street. Investors increasingly anxious about our country's leadership, whether in the White House, Capitol Hill, or the Federal Reserve. The Dow Jones Industrials today plunged, losing nearly 400 points. That's the worst one-day loss since Brexit. That when the United Kingdom voted to exit the European Union 2.5 months ago on June 23rd. That turned out to be a one-day affair, even though Wall Street analysts had predicted Brexit would create financial Armageddon for the Brits, if not for all of Europe. It, of course, did neither, and today's sell-off appears to have been mostly the result of another round of Federal Reserve job boning and a capital city conspicuously brimming with incompetence, ineptitude, and precious little modesty. Investors today reacted to the mounting Russian, Chinese, and Iranian provocations, increasing challenges facing our government and our passive-aggressive president, a frequently confounding president whose passivity is insistent when confronted with our enemies and whose aggressiveness seems to know no bounds when asserted against our friends and allies. It has been almost 9 months since the Fed last raised interest rates, December 16th of last year, and warning us that 2 or 3 more interest rate hikes would follow this year. They, of course, have not. The Fed was wrong then, and it seems utterly confused now. But nonetheless, every bit is vocal. The Boston Fed president today claimed there is a case to be made for gradual interest rate hikes. Investors thought him to be both wrong and unserious, and they sold on his nonsense. Donald Trump earlier this week saying the Fed has been rigging the economy to help President Obama, and peril awaits us all.
It's a very false economy. We have a false economy. We have a bad economy, everyone understands that, but it's a false economy. The only reason the rates are low is so he can leave office and he can say, see, I told you. But at some point, the rates will have to change.
We'll be taking up the issues of confused leadership, whether at the Fed or government or in, of course, executive offices of corporations across America and certainly on Wall Street. We'll be taking up falling markets and a slowing economy as well. Also tonight, now it is the turn of the Democrats. What to do about Hillary? Hillary Clinton's plunging poll numbers have struck both fear and anxiety into her former colleagues in the Senate. Reports that Democratic senators are now anxious the Democratic nominee may be doomed in November, as well as their chances of winning control of the Senate. Amongst her problems and theirs, lawmakers say, is her public persona, too guarded, they say, and her failure to connect with white working-class voters. Donald Trump, in contrast, continues to build momentum, having one of the best weeks of his campaign. The Republican nominee today, speaking at the Value Voters Summit in Washington, he argued that more of the same failed Democratic leadership and devastating social policies that have punished the poor and minorities for a half-century will surely lead to ruin for them and the nation in this century.
The Democratic Party has run the inner cities of America for 50, 60, 70 years, some cases over 100 years. Over 100 years. Their policies and their politics, and in particular the politics of people like Hillary Clinton, have produced only poverty, joblessness, and rising crime.
Tonight, more evidence that the politicized Justice Department priorities in its so-called investigation were to protect Hillary Clinton at almost any cost. New reports that the Department of Justice gave immunity to a second computer technician who wiped out Hillary Clinton's private email server despite a congressional subpoena and orders from Congress to preserve her files. Just another day for the Clinton cartel and our corrupt Capitol. We'll take all of that up with our expert politicos, the Weekly Standard's Fred Barnes, Tony Sayegh, and Diana West. Turning now to the longtime leader of that cartel, the former president himself. Bill Clinton on the campaign trail now and coming up today with a beauty. Mr. Clinton trying to sell friendly Democrats on the notion that Donald Trump's "Make America Great Again" is actually a racist slogan. But hypocrisy and memory failure, not unknown elements in the Clinton family. Listen as the former president went after Trump hard in the battleground state of Florida.
That message where I'll give you America great again is, if you're a white Southerner, you know exactly what it means, don't you? What it means is, I'll give you the economy you had 50 years ago, and I'll move you back up on the social totem pole and other people down. What Hillary wants to do is take the totem pole down and let us all go forward together.
Wow, that was some construction, wasn't it, by the former president? He had to work hard to come up with his strange interpretation, and he obviously has forgotten when he, an Arkansas Southern Baptist, favored the very same phrase when he was campaigning for president.
I believe that together we can make America great again.
I want to attack these problems and make America great again.
You are being called upon, every one of you, to secure a better future for your children and your grandchildren, and to make America great again economically, educationally, and socially.
Amazing, isn't it? And it was a phrase the Clintons used again and again when Hillary ran for president back in 2008. Listen to her campaign radio ad.
It's time for another comeback. Time to make America great again. I know Hillary's the one who can do it.
Wow. Impressive, huh? Trump campaign manager Kellyanne Conway pointed to the inconvenient video and audio in calling the former president's bizarre allegations about Trump's slogan a disgrace. Have you noticed we haven't heard from Bill Clinton a lot lately on the campaign trail? And today's performance a reminder of the reason the Hillary campaign can't afford a lot of Bill's support. Our first guest tonight says Bill Clinton's remarks are the latest example of a flailing Clinton campaign. Joining me now, executive editor of the Weekly Standard, Fox News contributor, Fred Barnes. Fred, great to have you with us.
Thank you.
That is an amazing performance on the part of the former president, even by Clinton standards, a nasty but utterly silly attack on a man who looks to be now the front runner in this contest.
Well, it was a silly attack. And, you know, the columnist Thomas Sowell has always said when they call you a racist, that means they're losing the argument. And Hillary, indeed, is losing the argument. It was a terrible week for her. The emails are still a problem. She did very badly in that non-face-to-face debate on Wednesday night where Donald Trump did well. I mean, whatever the bar was for him to rise above, he rose above it and did very well. And the Clinton campaign just doesn't know what to do. They're panicking, and Bill Clinton's statement is a very good example of that panic.
Well, it is extraordinarily strange to hear now everyone advising Hillary Clinton, just as they were doing for Donald Trump a month ago. Now she's too guarded. She needs to reveal herself to the electorate. And I think many Republicans are thinking, please, Hillary, please just reveal your soul to the public and we'll call this a contest. What do you think?
I think she has revealed her soul to the public, and they've assessed it correctly. It's not helping her. I mean, they act like there's some hidden personality there that Hillary is going to reveal, but she's holding back. Of course, that's nonsense. I mean, they're desperate trying to come up for something for Hillary. I'll tell you what she needs to do. She needs to stop making excuses for herself and taking responsibility for a thing or two. For instance, the emails, as she said again this week, oh, that was a mistake because the non-secure email system, but I don't make any excuses. And then she goes on, as she always does, to make excuses. Excuse after excuse after excuse.
Well, her excuses are supplanted by her lies often, and they simply just lay there. The national liberal media simply doesn't know what to do. They continue to attack Trump. I mean, to look at the front page, the home page of the Washington Post, is to see a constant stream of attacks on Donald Trump. It is, have you ever seen anything like what the Washington Post and to a lesser degree what the New York Times are doing in any presidential campaign in your career.
I haven't, and I've lived in the Washington area almost my whole life and been reading the Post since I was a teenager, and I've never seen anything quite like it. You know, it was one thing that was interesting today. A former Post political reporter, Jim Fandai, a founder of Politico,
right,
the great institution that covers politics, and he's forming a new venture. And what he said today in an interview with Hugh Hewitt was he has never seen the media so decisively pro-Clinton and anti-Trump. He says it's scary, this bias.
It may scare him. I am heartened by it because there is no veil of pretense any longer. The national liberal media is presenting themselves for what they are. A left-wing bias that overwhelms reason, reality, in favor of the establishment, the status quo that's been created by wrong-headed liberalism for a half-century in this country. Can you see my point of view?
I do. I happen to agree with it.
Fred Barnes, I'm going to get out of here with that. It's always great to be in agreement with the great Fred Barnes, and we appreciate it. Thanks so much, Fred.
Bye-bye.
We're coming right back. Much more straight ahead. Stay with us. Before Iran then released hostages that they had taken, then we learned there were 2 more payments to Iran. They totaled $1.3 billion, again delivered in foreign cash currencies. Now, reports that the real number, now see what we've done here, we've gone from 400 million to 1.3 billion or 1.7 billion in total to now more than $33 billion, that's right, delivered to the Iranians in cash, again, foreign currencies, and gold. That's according to a new report from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. And joining us tonight on that organization's, findings, senior counselor and former Cheney National Security Advisor, John Hanna. John, great to have you with us. This is absolutely an incredible, in the full sense of the word, an incredible series of developments to learn that a president of the United States is dealing with the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism in cash, in the currency of foreign nations, and for the life of me, I can't figure out how he got a hold of the money.
Yeah, and totally untraceable, of course, Lou. Any drug dealer or terrorist can tell you that the way to go is cash, because nobody will catch you as you engage in all kinds of nefarious activities, from funding the likes of Hezbollah to, of course, this incredible ballistic missile program that Iran has got that they want to eventually aim at the United States.
What do you make of a president who says to everyone, upon all of the reports, when we learned then that there was a contemporaneous, if not an instantly simultaneous transfer of the hostages that Iran had taken and the $400 million in foreign currencies in cash delivered to them? The president denied there was a ransom. He denied that there was anything new about this development, when in fact it's all new to the American people, isn't it?
Absolutely. The fact that he hid all of the most important and sordid details about this deal from the American people and their representatives in Congress just underscores how rotten this deal was from the beginning. If the American people had known that we'd sent cash to the leading state sponsor of terrorism in unmarked bills in the middle of the night on a plane that was probably connected to Iran's Revolutionary Guards,
right,
they would have been outraged, and no doubt Congress would have taken steps to try and put a stop to it.
Where is Congress in all of this? Are they truly the impotent institution that they now appear to be? They call for hearings, they send letters to people, including the President of the United States. They don't get responses, and they don't get results from their investigations. What is left of Congress as a co-equal branch of government?
Yeah, no, the balance is completely out of whack now, Lou, and it is very dangerous, especially given this administration's instinct.
Why doesn't anybody talk about it, John? I mean, it's staring us in the face. We have not an imperial, we have an imperial presidency that has unchecked powers, with the possible exception of the Supreme Court, which right now is at least delayed an executive fiat against the that had stopped the deportation of as many as 5 million illegal immigrants. But that is just simply held in abeyance. It's not resolved.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the Supreme Court is not, of course, not an elected branch of government.
Right.
We've got a Congress that is supposed to be a co-equal branch of government that has a serious oversight role over administration efforts to act that are contrary to the Constitution, including in foreign affairs, and it's just not playing that role at the moment.
And what role will this government, whether the executive or to bring along Congress, what will it do in response to the provocations of Russia, of China, whether we're talking about the Black Sea, the Baltic, whether we're talking about the South China Sea, or whether we're talking about, suddenly the appearance on the part of Iran that they are moving straight ahead with the development of a nuclear bomb, despite the release by this administration of $150 billion to them.
And don't forget to add to that, Lou, the fact that we had a fifth North Korean nuclear test today. Right. Not to mention last week they fired off 3 more medium-range ballistic missiles. This has been an awful week for U.S. interests. Just underscores how weak and feckless they see this lame duck administration as being. They're going to continue to push and to probe in increasingly bold and dangerous ways. And that's the way that countries get into war. When U.S. deterrence begins to break down and unravel, as it has under this president, things become very dangerous. And there's no fixing it until we get a new president. And then it's only going to be at a higher cost to the American people to restore our deterrence.
Well, it's going to be a higher cost in some ways, but perhaps a much lower cost in others, in the most important ways, in the loss of greater treasure and certainly the loss of lives, because a modest foreign policy that George W. Bush spoke of in 2000 when he campaigned for the office, that upon assuming he was anything but modest, we're talking about right now a nation that is almost $20 trillion in debt. We are watching our military emasculated, whether by the civilian leadership under this presidency, or whether it be by the lack of resources as a result of the sequestration that this Republican Congress and Senate agreed to.
Yeah, no, there's a huge rebuilding task that the next president is going to have to do to try and figure out how he rebalances America's role in the world and tries to correct some of the enormous damage that I fear has been done.
How frustrated are you with a national liberal media that goes after the Republican nominee because he returned a compliment to Vladimir Putin, and they act as if he had just created a 5th column in the United States? Can the national left-wing media get any more puerile, any more just outright silly in their coverage and their analysis?
Listen, I'm no fan of Putin's either, but the fact is that if you look at what this administration did, and they did it with Secretary Clinton in power in terms of that absolute tragic failure of the Russian reset, you just hope that the media would give at least equal time and attention to that instance that really affected U.S. policy and U.S. interests around the world.
John Hannah, it is always great to have you with us. We thank you so much for your insight. Appreciate it. And be sure to vote on our poll tonight. The question is, do you think President Obama has it in his nature to be straight with the American people on any issue whatsoever? Just one. Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. We'd like to hear from you. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight. And follow us as well at LouDobbs.com. A few thoughts now on the wily Clinton shape-shifting on the campaign trail. Clinton wants to sound as much like Donald Trump as she can these days, it seems, but she's been bought and paid for by the very establishment Donald Trump is running against. She wants you to forget she's one of the principal architects of the status quo that is suffocating our middle class and working people who aspire to be part of it. She's the elitist. She's the corporatist. He's the populist. She's the globalist. He's the nationalist. She's about globalism no matter how high, how severe the cost to America and Americans. Trump's all about America and Americanism. Look who loves her. especially with their money. Clinton's single biggest benefactor, the left-wing billionaire George Soros. He's given millions to Clinton, pledged millions more. That's not counting the millions he's given to other left-wing groups as well to help her win the presidency that he sees as important to his own influence. Clinton's biggest individual donors are hedge fund billionaires who've given $123 million to Clinton. Okay, I know. They've also given money to Donald Trump. And here's the amount, $19,000. That's right, $123 million for Clinton, 19,000 little dollars for Trump, who says when he finds out who that 19 grand came from, he'll give it all back. The billionaire co-founder of Facebook, Dustin Moskovitz, today said he's giving another $20 million to Clinton and other Democratic groups. Moskovitz joins a long list of technology billionaires who back Clinton. Some of them heads, of course, of public companies like Apple CEO Tim Cook, Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg, and using those public companies' resources to support Clinton and to oppose and attack Trump. Clinton spent much of last month slithering through the wealthy enclaves of the country, from Beverly Hills to Martha's Vineyard, picking up million-dollar checks all along the way. The Clinton camp tries to make us believe that most of her money comes from small individual donations, say $20 here, 30 there. But nearly two-thirds of that $327 million she's raised so far comes from big donors. Two-thirds, compared to just 15% for Trump from big donors. So we know who the populist is. We know who is bought and paid for by the establishment, don't we? And just ask yourself, what will all of those billionaires and corporate chieftains get for their money were she to be elected? You only have to look at the last Clinton presidency to get some sense of it. From the NAFTA trade deal that destroyed millions of manufacturing jobs to the repeal of Glass-Steagall, a massive deregulation of Wall Street that led in large measure to the 2008 financial crisis. We all know what the Clinton cartel is capable of. Look at what big donors to the Clinton Foundation expected and what they received when the Clintons were shaking and baking the Clinton Foundation and the Department of State at the very same time. What a cash machine they created as they carried out the biggest pay-for-play scam in American political history. So the question tonight is, how in the world can anyone who gives a damn about this country, who has any sense of decency, even think of returning the Clinton cartel to power in the White House? It is, in my humble opinion, utter madness. And frighteningly, it remains still possible. It's time for everyone who does care about this country to do our part. We have 60 days till the election that will decide the future for generations of Americans. Our quotation of the evening: on the contest between what we face this year, between liberalism, if we can call it that, and conservatism, as such as it is. This from William F. Buckley, Jr., who said, quote, "Liberals, it has been said, are generous with other people's money, except when it comes to questions of national survival, when they prefer to be generous with other people's freedom and security." We're coming right back. Breaking news tonight: Secretary of State John Kerry and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov announced they've reached a ceasefire agreement in Syria. Kerry said after the deal has held for 7 days, the United States and Russia will increase military cooperation. That ceasefire to take effect by sundown this coming Monday. Joining us now to discuss these developments and much more, General Jack Keane, retired four-star general, chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, Fox News military analyst. General, great to have you with us. Assess for us, if you will, the likelihood that this agreement is meaningful and has some chance of succeeding.
Yeah, we shouldn't hold our breath here. As hopeful as a ceasefire sounds, Lou, the chance of this actually leading to anything in terms of a political objective and an ultimate solution is next to nothing. First of all, even the Russians have not abided by the previous ceasefires, right. And the most radical opposition groups are not participating in these talks and therefore not participating in the ceasefire. That is the elephant in the room that Secretary Kerry is not volunteering as information.
The rebel groups in Syria are almost indistinguishable from one another. They're not monolithic by any means, as you well know. And the American public has very little to go on when the administration talks about arming rebels, arming opposition groups to Assad, and now Russia steps forward with Lavrov and with Kerry shaking hands, if you will, at least figuratively, if not literally, on the prospects for peace in Syria. What's it going to take to actually make something work there? Or can it work?
Well, under the current proposition, no. The Russians have successfully propped up the Assad regime based on their military incursion. The reality is the opposition forces in 2015 were putting the regime in a precarious position not seen since the beginning of the Civil War. Russia has solved that problem. The second issue is most of the opposition groups will not stand for Assad or the Alawite regime staying in power. In other words, they will fight, and they will continue to fight. They have lost 400,000 people in their neighborhoods and their communities. There's 8 million people displaced. The sacrifice have made is significant. Genocide is being committed on a regular basis against them. They are absolutely committed to removing this regime. They are not going to give this fight up.
One of the great ironies, it seems to me, a tragic irony, is the condemnation from particularly the Republicans of President Obama, because he's bringing in 10,000 Syrians unvetted and at the behest of the United Nations without any responsibility or accountability for the administration itself, while the administration is in fact responsible for the millions of people who have been displaced by the hostilities in Syria. And it's as if he gets a complete pass for what has been one of the most wrong-headed and inhumane policies ever undertaken by any U.S. administration.
No, you put your finger on that, as eloquently said, and it's so frustrating that here an American administration would underwrite this kind of human catastrophe and not take reasonable measures which were available to us to try to do something about it. Even to this day, we could still put in safe zones near the Jordanian and Turkish border where a lot of these people would go to. That would take some risk, of course, but it's worth doing given what's taking place before our eyes.
Yeah, and leaders take risks. Donald Trump has proposed it precisely that. It proposed, obviously, long before he agreed to the view of those safe zones for the hundreds of thousands, millions of refugees. North Korea, if we can touch upon it briefly here, General. We're talking about a magnitude 5+ earthquake readout on their latest nuclear test. This is starting to be a very, very urgent threat, is it not, from North Korea and its sponsor, China?
Yes, they are on a path to develop a nuclear ballistic missile capable of reaching the United States. That has been their goal. The South Koreans, who have the best insight, say they are making progress, but the technology challenges here are formidable. Miniaturizing a nuclear weapon and also developing a reliable intercontinental ballistic missile. Both of those are tough, and it'll still take some time. The reality is there's only two ways this can end in terms of trying to stop the North Koreans. One is China, you mentioned it, but they're more frustrated with the United States than they are with North Korea. And I believe they're going to continue to give them a lot of rope here, at least for the foreseeable future. And the second thing, we have sanctions going right now, but they don't make any difference to the North Koreans. We should go after their personal wealth for the individuals themselves. The Bush administration did it one time and brought them to the negotiating table. We really have the means to do that. It would take international cooperation, to be sure, but we should do that. And don't hope on China, though we should work with China, but don't think that China is going to solve this problem in the near term.
General, as always, we appreciate your insight, your views. Thanks so much. General Jack Keane. America's toughest sheriff, and I would say America's best sheriff, Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio. He's running for a 7th term, right, Sheriff? It's
yeah.
I'm doing my quick count there. It's great to have you with us. Let's talk about this tightening race in Arizona. Trump is up 1.7 points in the averages. Is he on his way to, do you believe, victory in Arizona?
Of course, don't believe these polls that come out. Yeah, he's got a silent majority out there. He's got a lot of people supporting him in Arizona, across the country. He's earned, he works hard. I've never seen a guy work so hard in my life.
Isn't that the truth?
I was with him from day one. One reason I supported him right from the beginning, I know and knew and believe today that he's a winner. And, you know, I'm a veteran of the Korean conflict, cop 55 years, and he said that he's going to crack down on crime. Way back then, talks about the wall. He opened the door for illegal immigration. These politicians did not want to face that issue, but everybody talks about the wall. You better build that wall and stop the drugs and terrorism coming into our country.
You know, Sheriff, I can't believe I shouldn't say this, but I really still am surprised that the national left-wing media refuses to acknowledge how dangerous that border with Mexico is, where the majority of the marijuana, methamphetamines, heroin, and cocaine come into this country over that border. And the little darlings will sit there and talk about, border control as if it was some sort of, fantasy. It is absolutely essential to the well-being of this country.
Well, I have to go back to when I was a director in Mexico City with the U.S. Drug Enforcement. I say that because I know how they operate. You have to take the lead from the president, Secretary of State. How many times has Hillary been to Mexico and the president to put the pressure on them to stop the illegal drug traffic and illegal immigration?
Yeah.
How many?
One of the things that I really like about the fact he met with the president of Mexico
it's great.
Is that it looks like the beginning of a mature relationship between Mexico, rather than the patronizing nonsense of this administration and previous toward Mexico. Responsibility for what is happening on the border on the part of Mexico as well as on the part of the United States. Sheriff, we're right out of time. I just want to reinforce Sheriff Arpaio, one of the earliest supporters of Donald Trump's candidacy for the president. Truly, both men committed to law and order in this country, which is in, frankly, let's be honest, short supply. Sheriff, great to see you, and I wish you all the very best. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lou.
Thanks, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, one of the great Americans. Well, up next, the NFL goes political. A possible national anthem protest? Are you kidding? On the anniversary of September 11th? We'll take it up with Diana West and Tony Sayegh here next. Stay with us. In our online poll last night, we asked you, has the liberal national media mollycoddled and protected any presidential candidate in history as much as they have Hillary Clinton? 87% of you say, no, they have not, which means 13% of you think everything's just ducky. Joining us tonight, Diana West, syndicated columnist, author of the book American Betrayal, The Secret Assault on Our Nation's Character, and Republican campaign strategist, Fox News contributor, Tony Sayegh. Thank you both for being here. And Diana, great to have you back on the show. You too, Tony, but it's just been longer with Diana, if I may. Diana, what do you make of this race right now, tightening? Donald Trump seems to be hitting every note absolutely perfectly. He's in perfect stride on the campaign trail, and Hillary Clinton is falling all over herself.
Yes, long may it wave. What I want to see Donald Trump get crunchier. By that I mean I want to see him bringing more detail, more specifics to his case, which is fantastic and colossal against the disintegrating Hillary Clinton.
Specificity is the order of the day from Diana West. Tony, what do you think?
The incredible shrinking candidate. Look, Hillary Clinton has been forced out of the witness protection program, which she's resided in for the better part of this summer, because Donald Trump has gained a net of 11 points in 3 weeks, Lou, largely because he is going out there. He is making the case. Started with immigration reform, took the trip to Mexico, got specific in Phoenix with his speech. He's done it with school choice. He's done it with military preparedness. He's done it with ISIS and combating terror. He has become the person who is the most presidential in this race, and the people are rewarding him. Aside from now having 90% of Republicans in these polls, he's winning independents by 20%. He's winning married women by close to 20%. He's winning military voters by close to 20%. These are all important indicators of strength for him.
But he's losing women overall. And, Diana, that is troubling, I know, to Donald Trump, but it's also important that women are responding to a flawed candidate with deep and profound character issues, scandals that are trailing her from each of the past 3 decades. I mean, how can that be?
I've got the solution for Donald Trump. And that is specifically, there is an amazing video that's gone viral called I Thought You Should Know, and it details the terrible rape case of Becky Shelton back in the 1970s. Hillary Clinton got that rapist off using every trick in the book. People should look at that video and listen to her talking about the case in the 80s, laughing about it. This woman was scarred for 40 years. She's only come out to talk about this once she realized it was Hillary Clinton who was her the defense lawyer in this case. It ruined her life. She could not have children. The rape was so terrible. Hillary got this person off. Women, listen to that story. It is horrifying.
Well, and that is a solution for women who are, in some ways,
on the fence.
I think it is, frankly, I cannot process why anyone would go for a candidate with the flaws that she's demonstrated, the lapses of character and judgment that are extraordinary.
Give female voters more credit at the same time, Luke, because when we go beyond the top lines of her winning women, they still don't trust her, and they still don't like her, and they're not enthusiastic about voting for her. And she needs to win them in big ways to beat Donald Trump, and I don't think she can. All right.
With that, Tony Sayegh, Diana West, thank you both for being with us. We appreciate it. And that's it for us tonight. Please join us here Monday. Among our guests will be Congressman Mike Pompeo. Until then, have a great weekend, and good night from New York.